Hi everyone, and welcome back if you were with us at the earlier presentation, and welcome if you're just joining us now. I'm here this evening, I have the honour of being here this evening with Mark Coker of Smashwords, and he has just delivered a fantastic presentation all about self-publishing, from basic to advanced and everything in between. And if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check it out. What we're going to be talking about now is something that I know is of great interest to lots of our members, and that is merchandising for Apple, who are aggressively expanding into countries all over the world and reaching the places Amazon are not reaching, and therefore of great interest to writers everywhere. So hand you over to Mark, and if you have any questions, send them through, and we will post them to Mark at the end. Take it away, Mr. Coker.
All right, Orna, thank you, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining us for the second segment of this talk. Going to click to screen share the presentation. Just a moment here. And here we go. Alrighty. So, in this segment, we're going to talk about merchandising at the Apple iBooks store, how to reach more readers. And again, this is this part 2 and the smart publishing strategies for indie authors extravaganza that we're doing today. So just a little bit about this presentation, what you're going to learn. I'm going to share with you my views and my experience on Apple's approach to the ebook business. We'll talk about their ebook strategy and how that compares to Amazon's strategy, and we'll talk about what this means for authors. And then we'll jump into how Apple merchandises books and what indie authors can do to raise the visibility of their books in the Apple store. So that's me. Hello. All right, quick introduction. I did a quick introduction in the last talk. I'll do it again for this talk, just in case we've got people joining us who weren't part of the last talk. So I'm the founder of Smashwords. We're the world's largest distributor of self-published ebooks. We're a free ebook publishing and distribution platform. We make it fast, free, and easy for any writer anywhere in the world to self-publish an ebook. Smashwords has been an authorized global aggregator for the iBooks store since the iBooks store launched in 2010. They launched in April 2010, concurrent with the launch of the iPad. And so a lot of what I'm sharing here is, from my personal experience working with Apple over the last few years. Let's talk a little bit about the story behind Smashwords. I'll give you the abbreviated version. My wife and I wrote a novel. We had a great agent representing us. Every publisher rejected us twice over the course of 2 years. They didn't want to take a chance on our book, so they did their best to stamp out our dreams of authorship. My wife and I dreamed of seeing our book at Barnes & Noble one day. That was like the sole extent of our aspiration when we wrote our book. We wanted to see it in bookstores because my wife and I love bookstores. That's where we go every week when we can on date night. So the experience really opened my eyes to what I viewed as the problems with traditional publishing and how publishers were squandering the future of books and how they were failing to serve authors and readers. At the root of the problem is that publishers, and we're talking about the dark ages of publishing prior to 5 years ago, publishers controlled the printing press, they controlled access to retail distribution, and they controlled the knowledge of professional publishing. These are the 3 legs of the stool. These are the 3 things that you need to be a successful publisher and to connect your book's words with reader eyeballs. So they controlled everything. They had a monopoly on this. And the publishing industry really didn't change that much over the last 200 years, other than in recent decades consolidating and becoming more of a big business, more run by bean counters than the editors who are really the heart and soul of the business. So I came up with an idea. It was a crazy idea. I wanted to make it possible. I wanted to make it fast, free, and easy for any writer anywhere in the world to instantly self-publish a book. I wanted to give writers the freedom to publish whatever they wanted, and I wanted to give readers the freedom to enjoy what they wanted. I wanted to give readers the freedom to decide which books were worth reading. And so that's what we launched in 2008. 2009, we expanded our focus and became an ebook distributor. So we opened up, for the first time, self-published ebook distribution to Barnes & Noble and Sony. And then later we signed distribution deals with Kobo, Apple, and others. We spent a lot of our time at Smashwords, or I should say I spent a lot of my time focused on just helping to share best practices knowledge. The primary vehicle for that sharing are the 3 books that I wrote, the Smashwords Style Guide, the Smashwords Book Marketing Guide, and the Secrets to Ebook Publishing Success. And doing talks like this and talks at writers' conferences, I really believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that to the extent that I can help you as an indie author publish more professionally and more successfully, it helps books, it helps readers, and it helps the world. Because I think books are essential to the future of mankind. I think books are really important. I think books are more important than dollars. And I think that's one of the problems that traditional publishers have. They value books based on perceived commercial merit. But I think if you've written a book and it has a total commercial market of just 20 readers, but for those 20 readers, your book has a profound impact on their life, I think your book is just as worthy as a New York Times bestseller. So I'm really excited by the quantity and quality of works that have been published as a result of this ebook self-publishing revolution. And here's what some of the numbers look like here at Smashwords. So the first year, 2008, we published 140 books. Then things took off. We're now publishing over 250,000 books from over 60,000 indie authors around the world. It's been incredible fun, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the entire indie author community for supporting us and allowing us to be your partner as you change the world, because all of you are changing the world as an indie author. This is how Smashwords distribution works. You format your book as a Microsoft Word file, you upload it to Smashwords, we instantly convert it into multiple ebook formats, we put your book up for sale on the Smashwords homepage within 5 minutes of your upload, and then we distribute your book to multiple major retailers. We distribute to Apple, Barnes & Noble, Sony, Kobo. We distribute now to public libraries. We recently signed a deal with Flipkart, and we signed a deal with Oyster. So we're very interested to embrace new and innovative models for distribution and also new geographies for distribution. Our authors earn 60% of the list price when we sell your book at the major retailers. We take 10% of the list price commission, and that's how we earn our money. We don't sell any publishing packages. We don't employ salespeople. We only earn money if we help you sell books. Here are some of the retailers that we distribute to. Should also point out that this is pretty unusual for an ebook distributor, but we also operate an ebook store, our own little retail operation, and that's at smashwords.com. All right, so let's get started. I think this will be fun. Let's talk about the Apple opportunity. Um, now, most of you may know the Apple Store is the iBook Store, one word, but they're in the process of rebranding it. It's going to simply be iBooks, just like iTunes. Um, this gives you a sense of how our sales at the iBook Store have grown over the last three years. We have seen incredible growth. When Apple first entered the market in April 2010, they received a lot of criticism um, by pundits and, well, by a lot of people who said, they don't know anything about books, their store sucks, they're small, Amazon controls 90% of the market, they're going to fail, whatever. I remember hearing all those stories. I remember all the criticisms of their store, and some of those criticisms were valid. The first iteration of their store is not what you see today, but they have grown very quickly in the years that followed. Let's talk about some of that growth. So again, they launched in 2010 with the iPad launch. Today, they have access to millions of book readers, millions of customers who only shop at the iBook Store. That's a really important point. There are millions of readers that you're only going to reach with Apple in the iBooks app. Over 600 million iOS devices have been sold. So iOS is the operating system for their devices, for the iPad, for the iPhone, the iPod Touch, the iPad Mini. So that's a lot of devices, a lot of screens, a lot of readers that you can access. Their iBooks app, their store operates within an app. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's been downloaded many, many more times than the Kindle app. So everyone's. I was just at a writers' conference the other night in San Francisco, and an author came up to me and said, "Well, my books are already on Apple through Kindle." And well, true, Kindle has the Kindle Reader that works on the iPad, but I explained to her that she wasn't really at Apple if she wasn't at the iBook Store, because that's where most of the readers are on that platform. They've got over 2 million books listed in the store. They operate in 51 countries. They've expanded aggressively internationally here over the last couple of years. I think a lot of writers and a lot of publishers don't really recognize how quickly they've expanded globally. Last month at Apple, 45% of Smashwords' Apple sales were outside the United States. The global market is growing very quickly. The market outside the United States is all of the markets outside the U.S. are, either entering or in the most exciting phases of their exponential growth phases. So I think the international story is going to become more and more interesting in the years ahead. And this is for English language titles. In 2012, this is probably another fun fact that most people don't realize, they were the world's #2 global seller of ebooks. In 2012, in the United States, they were the #3 seller of ebooks. But in 2013, they're going to be #2. They're already #2. And I can say this with confidence because we're distributing to both Apple and Barnes & Noble. So Apple's really come onto the scene in a big way, in a way that a lot of people may not yet recognize, but I think will recognize even more in the next couple of years. Let's talk about Apple's ambition. Because I think back to the very early days of 2010 when people were criticizing them and saying that they weren't committed to ebooks. This is what I think of Apple's ambition. I think you shouldn't underestimate Apple. I think Apple, in fact, I know Apple wants to do for digital books what they did for digital music. They want to become number one. I've worked with these folks now for the last few years. Um, they're really smart, they're really ambitious, and they want to be number one. In this next section, I'm going to share with you several slides where I compare and contrast Apple's approach to the market to Amazon's approach to the market. So I'm going to talk about characteristics of each, pros and cons of each. I should say up front that I'm not here to criticize either one of these companies. I think both of them are awesome companies, and you should be at both. You should be working and partnering with both of them. But most authors are most familiar with Amazon, so let's look and see how Apple is different from Amazon and how they're the same. So let's talk about first what they have in common. Both of these companies are absolutely fanatical about customer satisfaction. That's really all they care about, is customer satisfaction. And I think both retailers, if given the choice to sell a 99-cent book or a $9.99 book, if they think the 99-cent book is going to make their customer happier, they're going to promote the 99-cent book. I think that describes the general approach to both retailers. Both are expanding their multi-billion-dollar digital media businesses. So we're talking music, film, television, apps, books. And both are ridiculously smart. Both are very future focused. Both of them are chess masters. So you will see both of these companies doing things today that may not make sense to you today, but for them, they're making decisions today that they think will prepare them for the future that we're going to see in 5 years or 10 years. They're both very good at predicting where the world is going, what customers want, and both are expanding internationally. So, Apple's in 51 countries. I think Amazon is in 14 or 15 now, and I expect both of them to expand into more countries in the next year or two. Let's talk about their approach to hardware. So, devices. Amazon is the underdog in hardware. They came out with a Kindle. Definitely, Amazon's the pioneer in e-reading devices. They weren't the first to market with an e-reader. Many other companies beat them, but they were the first one to commercialize it in a massive way. Amazon, more than any other company, really catalyzed the ebook market here in the U.S. in late 2007, early 2008, 2009. Amazon drove the market. So massive kudos to them for that. But in the hardware business, no one does hardware like Apple. So we've got two very competent companies, both with competent hardware, but Apple with a lot more experience in hardware and a much broader installed base of hardware, a broader installed base of screens. We don't really know how many devices Amazon has out there in the marketplace, but we do know that Apple has over 1/2 billion devices out there, 1/2 billion screens that can act as an e-reading device. So keep an eye on this hardware battle. Keep an eye on the installed base of these devices, because over time, whichever one of these companies puts the most devices in the hands of the most customers will have the upper hand in this ebook battle. Let's see. Um, all right, so let's talk about reading apps. Amazon has brilliantly created multiple support for multiple devices with their Kindle apps. So you can read on a PC, on a Mac, on an iPhone, on an Android device. You can have your central Amazon library accessible on multiple devices. So that was really smart of them, and I think it's been successful for them. Now the Kindle app it's a pretty simple app. The features are somewhat limited, but it's extremely functional. So I think they've done really well with that. If you contrast that with Apple, Apple has an app. It's the iBooks app, but it only works on Apple's operating system, iOS. So they don't have an app that runs on Android, for example. I think they should, but they don't. We'll see if they do that in the future. But their app, I think, offers a much better reading experience when you compare the iBooks app to the Kindle app. It's got a better user experience, better user interface, more extensive font options, vertical scrolling, night reading. So it's a really nice app. And the app is I think more robust and user friendly. It supports EPUB 3. That's not something we support, but it supports more sophisticated types of books in their app, and multimedia, rich media books as well. Let's talk about how each of them differs in terms of how they work with partners and what their world outlook is. So at Amazon, there was a fortune story, and I cite it there, November 16th, 2012, by Adam Lashinsky. They talked about how a favorite Jeff Bezos aphorism is, "Your margin is my opportunity." And I think that really defines how Amazon views the world. They are working to vertically disintermediate everyone who stands between the author and the book buyer. So they're offering publishing services, they're offering their own distribution through their own massive retail channel, and if you are anyone standing in that path between the author and the reader, they're looking to replace you. They're looking to cut you out, to disintermediate you. And we've seen this in the print world, and I think we've seen it in the ebook world as well. So it's a valid legal strategy in business to vertically disintermediate. They have a track record of leveraging their power to put the squeeze on their suppliers. So they've done this with print publishers. Many years ago, most print sales were made through brick and mortar retailers, but now that most print sales are going through the online channels, now that Amazon is such a dominant channel for print sales and has a lock on so many print customers, they're able to put the squeeze on the publishers and on the distributors of print books to give Amazon better margins or to pony up co-op dollars so that they can receive whatever benefits. And Amazon has already shown that they're willing to do this with indie authors as well. As they've entered countries where other ebook retailers don't have a strong presence, they've created tiered royalty structures. So like in India, for example, if you want to earn that typical 70% list as your royalty, they require you to have that book enrolled in KDP Select. If you want the 70% royalty in Brazil, you're required to be in KDP Select. So that's an example of them, putting the squeeze where they've got some power over you. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. This is what businesses do. Some businesses, if they have that opportunity, but not all businesses operate that way. I think Apple provides a really interesting contrast here. They have a track record of working very closely with partners like distributors, partners like Smashwords, working very closely with the publishers. When companies partner with Apple, that they don't feel like that Apple is trying to cut them out. I think it's very strong. Their approach is strongly exhibited by their aggregator program. Smashwords was one of the first authorized aggregators for the iBook store. We had 2,200 books in the Apple iBook store on day one of the launch of the iPad, and there were several other aggregators in that program. All of those aggregators must submit to regular audits. They're very selective about who they let into that program, but they're also very supportive of their partners. It's very clear to their partners, to anyone working with Apple, that they're just as happy to get the book from a distributor like Smashwords as they are to get it direct from the author. In fact, in many ways, they probably prefer getting it through these partners, because these partners help amplify their reach in the marketplace and help amplify their ability to attract more books more efficiently, more quickly, so that they can serve their readers. And it's really interesting, Apple's in 51 different countries. In many of these countries, Apple is the sole player in the ebook space. They're the primary ebook retailer. They have a lock on the market. You would think that they would take advantage of that lock by offering authors and publishers lower royalty rates in those countries where they have no competition. But they don't. They offer the same rates. And they do it without requiring exclusivity. So I think that's pretty cool. They've shown themselves to be very pro-author from day one. Let's talk about how they differ in ebook retailing. So Amazon is the world's largest seller of ebooks. In 2010, when Apple entered the market, they had about 90% market share. Today, that market share has dropped since Apple's entry, and that's partially due to Apple's entry, but also partially due to the fact that Barnes & Noble achieved quite a bit of success in the ebook market, and Amazon has competition now that they didn't have before, like from Kobo and from other emerging retailers. So their market share has dropped. I don't think anyone knows, except for Amazon, what the market share really is. I hear 50 to 60% of the market in the U.S., but there's a good chance I'm wrong. It might even be less than that. Amazon's retail store is the gold standard for retailers. It's the gold standard for algorithmic book discovery. So what do I mean by that, algorithmic book discovery? Amazon has done an absolutely amazing job of creating computer programs, computer software, algorithms, which are able to measure customer response to books and use that customer behavior to do a better job of predicting what customers are going to want to read next, and making books more accessible to more readers, satisfying readers with an algorithm that accurately predicts what you're likely to enjoy reading. So nobody does that as well as Amazon. They come from a browser background. Amazon has always been on the web. They've always been web accessible. They just have a super awesome store. And as I mentioned already, they've got their app on multiple devices. So their store is very accessible to readers. They do a great job. I, I really don't have any criticism for them on the retail front. They're what every retailer should aspire to do. Apple is gaining market share. Sales at the Apple Store doubled in 2012 over the previous year. I think that general trend is going to continue. I don't think that they're going to double this year. I don't think anyone is. I think the overall the market across all retailers has slowed quite a bit, and most of the retailers are kind of staying the same. But they do approach the market differently, whereas Amazon relies heavily on algorithmic book discovery. Apple has some of that, but it's not their strength. Apple's strength is in the merchandising, the human-powered merchandising. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the slides to come. But they're very editorially focused, real-life human beings deciding which books they want to promote and feature. The Apple iBooks store is contained within an app. It's called the iBooks app. You can download it for free or download it at iTunes. Their store is not browser friendly. It's not easy to purchase books over the web. I think it's clunky. If you click on a hyperlink to a book at Apple and you want to purchase that book over your web browser, you've got to wait for your browser to load the iTunes app or the iTunes application, the iTunes program, and then you can purchase it there. So it creates unnecessary friction, I think. It's friction that you don't get if you try to purchase a book over the web from Amazon. So it'll be interesting to see if Apple tries to change that in the years ahead. Definitely not as web browser friendly. It's difficult to find hyperlinks to your books at Apple. I'll share some secrets on how to do that in some of the slides that follow. Exclusivity. Okay, so Amazon, in the last talk, I talked a little bit about exclusivity with Amazon. We'll talk about it a little bit more here. Exclusivity is really central to Amazon's ebook strategy. Most people listening today are probably familiar with Amazon's KDP Select offering that they launched in December 2011. I will remember that day forever. It was the first day ever that we saw books disappear from Smashwords. So it was a pretty traumatic event. I remember it hit while I was on vacation, and I opened up my email, and I had an email box filled with emails from frantic authors asking what this means and what they should do. Obviously, I wasn't very pleased that they were promoting this exclusive program for multiple reasons. One of the benefits to Amazon of exclusivity is that it starves Amazon's competitors, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Sony, Kobo, and everyone else. It starves them of books, because readers who really want to read your book, if your book is only available at Amazon, then your reading behavior and habits are going to start transitioning more to Amazon and away from these other retailers that don't have those books. So to the extent that Amazon can create a massive library of books that are exclusive and available only at Amazon, they're going to attract more readers. That's probably the primary idea, one of the primary drivers behind exclusivity, that it helps them and it hurts their competitors. It undermines their competitors' ability to attract readers. It undermines their competitors' ability to sell books, to achieve profitability, and to stay in business. Authors who don't agree, so I should point out that KDP Select is a program that you opt into. So Amazon doesn't force you into it, you opt into it. Although they do make your account look like it's not fully complete and configured until you do opt in. But authors who don't agree to enroll in KDP Select are disadvantaged at Amazon. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. If you enroll, you get an advantage at Amazon. You get increased discoverability, you get increased flexibility in pricing, you can price it free, you get the benefit of the library lens for your book, and you get paid for those lens. All of those are really nice perks for enrolling in KDP Select. The authors who choose not to enroll in KDP Select, though, are punished. And they're punished because they refuse to join. They don't have that. Other books that they're competing against in that store have preferential discoverability and preferential earnings potential. So it's kind of interesting that they would do that they would segment their authors and publishers into these two groups, those that get the preferential treatment and those that don't. One of the downsides of exclusivity is that it makes the author more dependent upon Amazon. Now this is good for Amazon. If Amazon is the primary retailer buttering your daily bread, they have more control over you. If you're getting 90% or 95% of your sales through Amazon, they have control over you. And they're denying their competitors access to the benefits of carrying your books. But by making yourself so dependent upon a single retailer, they're also undermining your ability to build a diversified platform at other retailers. Anytime you become dependent upon a single seller of books, you risk the prospect that retailer rolls over in its sleep and accidentally crushes you the next time they change their discovery algorithms. And I can't count the number of times, I've lost count of the number of times I've seen authors complaining that authors who have all their books at Amazon complaining that suddenly 1 month after, just suddenly in 1 month their sales dry up. And it's really tough to see when I see that, because I know, as a distributor serving multiple retailers with, over 200,000 books distributed, I can see how books cycle over time. And we talked about this a little bit in the last presentation. Different books break out at different retailers at different times for different reasons. And you can have a book that does nothing at a retailer for months, but then suddenly breaks out. So you're going to have dry spells at every retailer. But the benefit of diversifying your exposure to multiple retailers is that you can weather those bumps, so that, because you don't have all your eggs in one basket. So let's contrast this with Apple. Exclusivity is not part of their strategy. They don't offer any exclusive programs. They don't offer any incentives for you to be exclusive. Now, of course, if you would like to make your book exclusive to Apple, then I'm sure they would be very pleased. But they're not going to try to tie your hands or limit you or punish your discoverability at the store simply because you're selling at other retailers. Oh, I clicked the wrong button here. Okay. So they offer the same high royalty rate of 70% for all of the territories and no exclusivity. And since day one of the Apple iBookstore, they have embraced free books. You can price your book at free at any time, and you can permanently price your book at free, which is a really powerful merchandising option. Let's talk about how Apple and Amazon differ in terms of author engagement. So at Amazon, anyone who's worked with them for any period of time knows that Amazon's pretty heavy-handed. You know, that you agree to their publishing contract and they hold you to it. They're very aggressive in price matching. So they want to see price parity in the marketplace. They want to have their prices be either lower or the same as every other retailer. And if they discover that your book is somewhere else priced lower, you're likely to get a threatening email reminding you that you are in violation of the terms and all these bad things that might happen to you if you continue to violate the terms of the agreement. They're very restricted on free. If you want to price your book at free at Amazon, there are really just two options. The first option is enroll your book in KDP Select and you'll get 5 free days per quarter. The other option is to distribute your books to Amazon and to Smashwords. Use Smashwords to get your book priced at free at Amazon's competitors, and then hope that Amazon price matches. So that's what a lot of authors do to get around the free restriction at Amazon. Let's contrast this with Apple. Apple approaches things differently. They have a very light touch. When you look at Apple's enforcement, it's really more around content and on formatting quality. You know, if a book has a poor NCX, poor navigation, if you're missing a chapter heading in your navigation, Apple will reject the book. Apple is not at all friendly to erotica. I think if all erotica were to disappear from the face of the planet, Apple wouldn't shed too many tears. Erotica has always kind of given them the willies. But they carry it. But they're pretty strict. They don't carry some of the racier varieties of erotica. They don't carry incest and pseudo-incest, and they've been clamping down on that for a long time. Now it's interesting. I've read recently that Amazon is starting to clamp down on that as well, on some of the incest and pseudo-incest books. I suspect the reason is that both of these companies have global aspirations, and both of these companies want to enter markets where the political climate and the consumer climate is much more conservative than in some of these more Western countries. I think that's the primary reason that we're seeing those clampdowns. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. Apple has no history of price matching self-published ebooks. Apple recognizes that often books are going to be more expensive at Apple than they are going to be at other retailers. One of the reasons for that is that Apple prices in tiers, like here in the United States. They only price in tiers, 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99. So if you've got a book that's priced at $1.50 at Amazon, that book is always going to be cheaper than the $1.99 book at Apple. But I think Apple's fine with that. They know that that's happening, and they're not going to send you a threatening email telling you that your book is available for sale somewhere else for less, and if you don't change it, they're going to kick you out of the program. They just don't do that. I don't think they care. I don't think they care about that. And also just, from an approach to business perspective, they just don't treat people that way. And we already talked about free, unrestricted free at Apple, without any strings attached. Okay, so that concludes that section. So let's learn more about merchandising at Apple iBooks. First, let's talk about what is merchandising. So for indie authors, if you can get included in a merchandising feature at Apple or at any retailer, it is your fast track to visibility at that retailer. So merchandising is the equivalent of, if you walk into a Barnes & Noble or W.H. Smith, the books that are sitting there on the front table or the front shelves. Often in the print world, publishers pay for that preferential space. In the ebook world, especially at Apple, the author doesn't pay for that feature space, but that feature space is very important. It's the equivalent of being front of the store and having a big recommended sticker slapped on your book. So merchandise books have a tremendous discovery and sales advantage because those are the first books that Apple customers see when they enter the Apple iBook store. So you get greater visibility. Greater visibility leads to more sales. Greater sales triggers the algorithms at Apple, the also bots, so people who bought this bought that. Greater sales causes you to rise in sales rank, causes you to appear in the genre bestseller lists and eventually the store-wide bestseller lists, because a lot of customers use those bestseller lists to choose their next reads. So you can see how any merchandising feature coverage of your book at the front of the store leads to a nice virtuous flywheel effect here of more sales leading to more sales, more platform building. You can have a single title promoted at the front of the Apple iBook store, and you can see the sales of all of your titles increase. Now, this merchandising is provided to authors at no cost and no exclusivity. Let's talk about the job of the merchandiser, the live human being at Apple who's making the decisions. As I mentioned a couple times already, Apple's in 51 countries around the world. They have a global team of merchandising professionals. Their job is to select books that are worthy of promotion. Every single week on Tuesday, they refresh their merchandising selections. So it's a huge job that the merchandising team has to come up with a different set of books every single week to promote in the store. Now they're looking for books, they're looking to feature and promote books that they think will please their readers. I talked earlier about how their number one goal is to please their readers. That's really all Apple cares about. They're very customer focused. They need to have confidence that your book is going to please their readers. If they don't have confidence that your book is going to please the readers, they're not going to promote it. They're agnostic when they're looking at traditionally published books or indie ebooks. So, Apple has been amazing over the last few years that we've worked with them in the support that they've provided indie authors. Now, I say they're agnostic, indie books versus traditionally published books, but I think in many ways at Apple, indie ebooks have some advantages over traditionally published books. Apple understands that indie ebook authors, the indie community, is becoming more professional. That the books put out by indie authors today are head and shoulders above, the quality of books put out 5 years ago. That the indie author community is becoming more sophisticated, that the indie author community is pioneering the best practices of professional ebook publishing, and that the indie ebook community is putting out books that are as good or better than the New York books. But the indie community is putting out books priced at a fraction of the price of the traditionally published books. This means that Apple as well as every other retailer that's supporting the indie community, realizes that they can offer high quality books to their customers at low cost. That pleases the customer even more than paying a higher price. Um, let's talk about how Apple promotes the books. So I'm going to give you kind of a high-level overview here, and then we're going to drill down even more in some of the following slides. If your book is promoted by Apple, it is promoted on the front page, the front of the store promotion. So when you hit the Apple iBooks app, you land on the featured page, and that's where they do the promotion. And they'll often create custom artwork for your promotion based off of your cover. So nothing that you need to do other than provide them a super awesome book and a super awesome cover. They send out email promotions almost every week, and it's really difficult to get your book in those email promotions, but if your book is in that email promotion, it's the equivalent of winning the lottery. We've had books featured in those promotions that went straight to #1. Apple's active on social media. Their Twitter account has over 200,000 followers for the iBook store. And they've also got an iTunes Facebook account, which might have a couple million people. I don't even remember what the number is. And they, if you follow them on Twitter, you'll see that they often promote the books that are in their store and promote the authors. So again, we're still talking high level here. Here are some of the different types of merchandising options. So I'll run through them very quickly, and then I'll show you some examples, some visuals. There are so many different types of features that you are eligible for as an indie author in the iBook store. They do single author features. They do sneak peeks where they promote sets of pre-order books or support or promote individual pre-order books. They do price promotions. They do like features that include the best books, the best 5-star books priced under $3.99 or whatever. They do a lot of topical and themed features, around holidays, current events, genre features. They'll do features around books that are trending really strong, what's hot. And they also do this feature called Breakout Books. And I'm going to show you that here. So we're going to look at some of the various features. Let's talk a little bit about how the virtual shelves in the store are organized. So everything is within the iBooks app. We talked about how the front page is the featured page, and I'm going to show you an example of that in a second, with major features at top, and then other categories of features below. And then they've got the features that you would expect that most bookstores would have. They've got bestseller lists, they've got top authors, and they've got search. All right, now let's talk about Breakout Books. I mentioned it a few slides ago. This is a really cool promotion, and they started it in late 2012. It originated out of the iBook store in Australia. The merchandising manager for Australia and New Zealand is really, really innovative, and a lot of really interesting ideas come out of Australia from him and his team. He and I were having a conversation on the phone, and he said, "Mark, I've got this idea." He said, "How would you feel if we did a feature in the store, and maybe we'll call it something like Breakout Books, and it'll just be Smashwords authors. It'll all be self-published books." And I said, that sounds like a great idea. As long as it's not like a ghetto where the books are all kind of hidden there and not available elsewhere. And he said, no, it would just be a special promotional feature. And so, I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't hold my breath, because that was like something that would be too good to be true for our authors to get that kind of promotional love. And a couple of weeks later, sure enough, he came through and did this massive feature, which had, I think, at least a couple thousand Smashwords authors in that feature. Um, our sales in that store went through the roof that week, and it was super successful for Smashwords, super successful for our authors, and also I think super successful for Apple, because following that promotion, Apple brought out that Breakout Books. They expanded that Breakout Books promotion, modeled on what they initially did in Australia, to Canada and UK, to the UK market, and then eventually to the US. And they evolved it over time so that now that promotion, it's an ongoing promotion. It only features, successful self-published ebooks. It's no longer, it was never intended to be exclusive to Smashwords, although Smashwords authors tend to dominate the list. So it's really cool that they give authors this level of merchandising support that is only available to indie authors. And so what you see here on the right side of the screen is what one of those Breakout Books promotions looks like. It received front of the store promotion, and you can see it even included 3 titles. I think all of them were from Smashwords authors. So this is Kirsty Mosley, this is Isabel Ray. I'm not sure if that was a Smashwords title, but and then you click on that, and then it exposes a lot more titles. This is an ongoing feature across multiple countries. And you'll see it pop up in the store on a pretty regular basis. Let's look at, this is what the store looks like on the iPhone. And I just wanted to show you how the merchandising features are organized. So this is the featured page. This is the page you hit when you open up the app. Along the top here is a rotator. So they do 3 themes along the top, and it's animated. It rotates across the 3. Obviously, as an author, you want to be up in that top. That's the prime real estate. But there's some other great places to be here as well. Right below that rotator, they'll pick different features to put right here, usually around a theme. So here it's fall's biggest titles, and next week. I think this is the promotion that's going this week, and then next week it might be something different. And we're looking here at the US iBook store. Different stores in different countries have different promotions all the time. So the promotions aren't necessarily standardized across the different territories. Below this second row here is this third row, and these are called bricks. And what these are, the customer can slide all of these, but can slide these, and these are specialized features. So what you'll find here is here's free titles for J.C. Daniels, or a single author promotion, or it might be romance titles under $3.99. And so there might be 8 or 10 of them along here, different types of merchandising features. All of the titles were hand-selected by Apple's merchandising team, and it gives their customers an option to engage with the books and find books that really match what they're interested in. So here's another screen from a different week, and you see, I'm not showing the rotator, which is up here, because I scrolled down, and they have hot this week. And then in the brick row, different features. And so here they were promoting a Smashwords author, Kirsty Mosley, and this title, Free Falling, which was available on pre-order. And I'm going to talk about Kirsty Mosley as a case study later in this presentation, because it was really cool. Here's another promotion Apple did, and I'm showing this now on the iPad. So iPad is obviously a larger format, gives them more flexibility. This is something they did in the United States, and this, you might say, was a precursor to the Breakout Books promotion. this is Smashwords author R.L. Matthewson. If you attended the last talk I did on best practices, I spoke about R.L. They were really impressed with her sales, and they were impressed that she was satisfying so many Apple customers, getting great reviews. And so the merchandising manager in the US came up with this idea. He said, we want to feature her. We're not sure what we're going to call her, but maybe we'll call her Breakout Author or something. And they put her at the top of the store with this massive promotion. It was amazing. That was just really cool. So here's another view of the store in the iPad. You can see again, a different display, hot this week, the different titles, some Smashwords authors featured on here, and then there's a brick. That's a single title promotion for Abby Glein's Twisted Perfection. So that's neat. So if you're an indie author, I mean, just think how awesome it would be to get that kind of promotion. Or here's another promotion, they do Book of the Week. That's like hitting the lottery. If your book can be named Book of the Week, it's going to drive a lot of sales, not only for that book, but for your entire list. A lot of the discovery in the store happens on the bestseller lists. So I'm showing a couple different lists, screenshots taken at different times. This shot was taken, it was probably April or May of 2013. You see that title, Twisted Perfection, was number 3 on the Apple store-wide bestseller list. This is a great place to be. It's pretty common. You'll see Smashwords titles in the top 10 at Apple. And this screenshot over on the right I took just yesterday. So Melody Grace's Unbroken, that's a Smashwords title. Number 4, store-wide in the Apple iBooks store. That's just massive. That's awesome. Actually, no, I'm sorry. She was number 4 in romance, which is the most competitive category at Apple. So that's great. She wasn't number 4 store-wide. But you want to see your book. You want to see your book in these lists, because when you're in these lists, your book is more discoverable, and you're going to sell more copies. Now these lists here are automatically generated. The merchandising team does not select this list. So customers select this list by their sales. The bestseller list is, near as I can tell, Apple has not told me this, but just based on my personal observation, it's based on unit sales. And it's unit sales over a very short-term period, with the most recent 24 hours weighted above the previous 24 hours. And I think this is pretty typical of Amazon, Barnes & Noble as well. They all have their different algorithms for determining how books appear on the bestseller list. Like in the Smashwords store, for example, our bestseller list is based on dollar volume, not unit volume. So we're a little bit unusual in that regard. I think most of the others are based on unit volume. So that's helpful for you to understand as you start developing your strategy to increase your visibility at Apple, especially when we're talking about pre-orders, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this is just another view of the store. This is on an iPad, so you can get a feeling for it. And you see along the bottom here, so there's the link for featured. They've got New York Times bestsellers, so they've kind of curated around that. Top charts, that's where you see the bestseller lists, categories, random browsing. Okay, so I showed you the different merchandising features, and hopefully you can visualize, how super awesome it would be to see your books in some of those features. let's start talking about, well, what can you do to get your books there? How do you get your books found in the store? So I'll talk about two things here in this next section. We're going to talk about what you can do as an author to make your book visible and discoverable in the store, and then we'll talk about what Apple does for you, and then there will be like subsections to each of these. So first, what can the author do? The first thing that you need to do is make sure that all your books are at Apple. That's kind of a no-brainer, but all of your books, get them all there. If you have books in KDP Select, this is self-serving for me to say, but get them out of there, get them into Apple. Free. Talked earlier about how Apple allows free. In our survey of Smashwords sales data and download data, we found that over a 12-month period ending May 2013, free titles at Apple on average got 91 times more downloads than a book at any price. So if you want to drive discovery of your book, make it free. Or if you want to drive discovery of your list, make at least one of your titles free. If you're doing series, make the first book in the series free. Just in the last month and a half, two Smashwords authors broke out into the top 10 at Apple, store-wide in the United States, simply by pricing a book at free. So it happens all the time. What else can you do to get your book found at the store? Well, market the store, market your books at the store, promote your books at the store. On your blog, on your website, in social media, you should provide your fans direct hyperlinks to all of your books at Apple. You know, so often I'll go to an author website and I'll see that there are only links to Amazon or only links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble or whatever. It's really important for you to recognize that your audience for your books is a global audience and your audience is diverse. They shop at different places. And your opportunity as an author is to eliminate the friction that prevents your target reader from buying your book now. And so remember, there are millions of people who only shop at Apple, because we're talking about Apple here, but the same thing applies to Kobo and to Barnes & Noble and to Amazon. Millions of customers shop only at those retailers. So when your fan comes to your website, provide them direct links. This is where you can find the book at Apple, at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, at Sony, at Smashwords, Kobo. And with a single click, they're transported into their favorite store where they already have an account, they click a button and can buy. So really, really important to make it that convenient. Because if you don't provide that list, if an Apple customer, an Apple device user, an Apple iBooks app user comes to your website or your blog and you're talking about your new release, they want it, but they don't know how to get it because it's not at their favorite store. And they would really prefer to have it on their device, which means you're making your reader have to load up the app and then type in your name, and hopefully they don't misspell your name, and try to find your book there. So it's much more convenient to provide them a direct hyperlink. Now, unfortunately, you know, previously I mentioned that unlike Amazon, Apple's store is not very web-friendly. It's very difficult for most authors to find the hyperlinks to their books at Apple, which is one reason why so many authors don't link to their book at Apple. But I'm here to help you see the way. We're going to make it easy here. So let's talk about some of the tools Apple has created to make it easy for you to transport Apple device users to your book at Apple. So they have this really cool tool at Apple called Widget Builder. At the bottom of the screen, I have the hyperlink. But if you want to take notes, just write, go to Google, type in Widget Builder Apple. And it's a cool little tool. You select here the type of widget you want, book discovery. You type in the name of the title. So I typed in my novel, BoobTube, and it came up. And you see the little widget appears on the screen, and you can configure the widget size so it'll work well for your blog or for your website. And then down below that, it'll give you the code that you paste into your blog or website so that you can have this widget appear on your website. And it's really cool. So it gives the description, the price, your cover image, and iBookstore. So this makes your book more accessible to Apple device users who are browsing your site. They're going to say, oh, iBookstore, that's where I shop. That's my favorite store. There's the book, and click, and they can go buy it. So take advantage of that. They've got other tools too. This tool is kind of neat. It's called Link Maker, and it makes it easy to find that direct hyperlink, that elusive hyperlink that you need if you want to point your fans to where they can to your book page at Apple. And again, you just type in the title, and then you select the country, so you can get a country-specific link, and books, click search, and that takes care of it. But I have a better way to find, I think I have a faster way to find the links rather than using this tool here, and that's just to go to Google. If you're like my title, if I go to Google and just type in BoobTube Apple iBookstore, click return, the first or second listing on Google will be my book page, and then I just click there, and then I'll see the hyperlink at the top of my browser. If you are publishing dozens or hundreds of books and you are a sophisticated web designer and you can do stuff like that, you could create a script or a tool that can automate the discovery or the generation of the internet links. This is kind of the formula. iTunes.apple.com/country code, so US, it would be GB for the UK, CA for Canada, AU for Australia, etc., book, blah, 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 and the ISBN. That's really complicated. But if for some reason the Google trick doesn't work, you can try that. But the Google trick will work, and this will definitely work. So I never use this method. But some web programmers like to know about that, because if you've got a database and a spreadsheet with 10,000 ISBNs in it, then it's really easy for you to generate automatically the links to 10,000 books using a coding system like that. All right, okay, so this tool, Apple's Banner Builder, I just stumbled across this the other day. I don't even, this might be so new, I don't even know if they've announced it, but I stumbled across it. It's public knowledge, so go take advantage of it. It's really cool. So you go to this address, banners.itunes.apple.com, or just Google Apple Banner Builder. Type in the title of your book, the country, books, click search, and then it pops up your book. You can choose, you can make banners of different dimensions, which is really neat. You can choose the background color on them as well. So for this one, I chose a white background and 728 pixels by 90 pixels tall. So this is like a banner that would go at the top of a web page, and it generated it for me. So there's the HTML code that I would paste into a website or blog, and there's the banner right there. There's my cover, the title, my name, download on iBooks. So go have fun with that one. I mentioned earlier in the talk that Apple's in the process of transitioning their branding. Previously, they were called the iBookstore, one word. In the future, they're going to be called iBooks. Now, you'll see in the banner that I just created yesterday, they're already starting to call themselves iBooks in some places. They've already changed their Twitter address to be iBooks. They have a place on the site. Here it is. If you go to apple.com/iTunes/affiliates, then click linking tools, and then click get badge and art guidelines, you can download these little images that you can put on your website or your blog. And you should do that because, again, this telegraphs to Apple users that your book is available in their favorite store. The only caveat I'll give you right now is that they haven't yet updated their, as of today, October, what are we, October 2nd? They haven't yet updated their badges and buttons to transition over to iBooks. So if you're listening to this, if you're listening to the archived version of this presentation, weeks after October 2nd, 2013, go ahead and go there, and you'll find it there because I'm sure they'll do it in the next few weeks. So you can get your buttons. Apple has an affiliate program. And there's the address for it, or you can just Google Apple iBooks affiliate program. They just recently enhanced the program with a higher percentage rate. So the way an affiliate program works is you can, you join this program, and then on your website and on your blog and in your social media promotions, you can append a little affiliate code at the end of the hyperlink that's attached to the address that points to your book page at Apple or to any page at Apple. And for 24 hours, you're going to earn 7% of the list price, even if they buy your book. So I think this is really cool. I think everyone should take advantage of this. It's a way for you to earn even more money when you drive customers to the Apple iBook store. And as I mentioned, they just recently enhanced it. Previously, the royalty rate was lower, and the affiliate program was available in fewer countries, but now it's available in a lot more countries than it was previously. And this is new just in the last month. But still, check out the program. You need to apply for it, and some geographic restrictions still apply. All right, so the second way to get found at the store. This is what Apple does to help you get found. Now I mentioned that there's got like sections and subsections of my presentation, so now we're going into a subsection. This is what Apple does to help you get found. There are two pieces to this, and then there'll be more sub-pieces to these things as we drill down even further. There's the merchandising, the automated merchandising that they do in their store, and then there's the human merchandising team merchandising, where they select titles. So let's look closely at both of these. So for the automated merchandising, we talked about some of this stuff already, so I'm going to go through it really quickly. They have, the search button at the bottom of the page that I showed you, where the customer can search in your title or your author name, or someone can go to Google and type in your name, and you might show up in their store, or you might not, because it's not as web-friendly as some of the other stores. The bestseller lists, so that's a common discovery interface within the iBooks app, and it's all customer sales driven on unit volume. And you can also drill down into different categories. So if you're a romance fan, you can drill down to romance or thrillers or whatever and see the best-selling books in that category. They have an also bought algorithm, just like Amazon and just about every other retailer has. So as they're displaying your book in the store, or as you're looking at a book, you'll be able to see people who bought this book also bought these books. That's really powerful, automated merchandising. Other books by this author. So if someone's looking at your book, I should have put a screenshot in here of this. If someone's looking at your book in the iBook store, they'll also see a display of they'll often see a display of other books that you've written. They're also really good at, every book at Apple has a sample, a free sample that the customer can download for free. And at the end of the sample, there's a buy this book link. So they drive the sales funnel for you. And they support pre-orders. So let's talk more about pre-orders. We talked about pre-orders in the last talk. We'll talk about them here specifically around Apple. So as I mentioned in the last talk, Smashwords distributes pre-orders to Apple, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. We began beta testing this feature around April of 2013, and we started beta testing with Apple exclusively. And then later we rolled out the beta test to the other retailers. The way pre-orders work is that a customer will see your book listed in the store, and it'll be listed alongside your other titles. And a pre-order title is a title that's not yet ready for download. It's not yet officially for sale, but it's available for pre-order, which means the customer can reserve a copy of your book. Now, their credit card is not charged at the time that they make the reservation. But when your book officially goes on sale, weeks in the future or months in the future, then their card is automatically charged and the book appears automatically in their Apple library. While your book is on pre-order, customers can download your free sample, which is about your first 10% of your book. Free samples definitely drive pre-order volume. One of the benefits of a pre-order is that it allows you more time to market and promote your book, and to promote it in advance of it being available for sale. It allows you to capture the reader's interest at that moment you have their attention, at that moment that they're reading one of your other books, at that moment that they finish reading one of your other books, at that moment that they stumble across your Facebook page or your blog or your website or your tweet. At that moment that you've captured their interest, you have an opportunity to capture the sale, to capture the purchase by making the pre-order available to them. Now, the true magic of pre-orders at Apple is that pre-orders can dramatically increase your visibility within the Apple iBook store and can improve your odds of getting merchandising love. And here's how. You can put your book up for sale at Apple in advance, and during this time you're accumulating pre-orders. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in some of the following slides, but I'll mention it here. Apple is able to see how many orders you're accumulating. And at Smashwords, we're able to see how many orders you're accumulating. And it's really easy for us to see which titles are likely to be the big breakout hits when they finally go on sale. So we look at that data, Apple looks at that data, we talk with Apple about that data, and books that are getting high rates of pre-order are much more likely to get merchandising coverage during that pre-order period. The other really exciting thing that happens with pre-orders is that on the day that your book goes for sale, all of those accumulated pre-orders credit on day one. So earlier I talked about how Apple's bestseller lists are based on unit sales. So let's say your book was available on pre-order at Apple for 3 months. And for each day on average during that 3-month period, you got 10 sales. So over 3 months, that'd be about 90 days. So at the end of that 3-month period, when your book officially goes on sale, you've accumulated 900 pre-orders. All of those sales credit as if they happened on that same day. And since the sales rank is based on the day's sales, and it weights the day's sales above all else, it causes you to spike in all the bestseller lists in the store. If you're selling if you get credit for 900 sales in a single day at Apple, most of the time you're going to be in the top 10 store-wide bestseller list. And depending on the day, and if you're a bit lucky, you might even hit #1 in the store, because you're going to have the 900 sales crediting plus whatever sales you get the moment, whatever new sales you get that come in once your book is finally available for sale. So this is how pre-orders give you an incredible discovery advantage at the store. So we've been doing pre-orders now for a few months, and I'm still surprised that most authors are not taking advantage of this powerful tool. It's kind of like cheating, but cheating in a good way. If you want to make your book more discoverable at Apple, do a pre-order. And choose a date that's far enough in advance so that you have enough time to promote it and market it so that you can accumulate enough orders to make a difference. Now, in my conversations with Apple, they recommend at least 1 to 2 months of advance pre-order time. So I call it pre-order runway. And that gives you a couple different advantages. One, it gives you more time to market, more time to accumulate orders. If you're publishing multiple titles, those other titles will drive pre-order sales during that pre-order period. So if you've got a big list of 10 other titles and you're selling a few titles every day at Apple, your other titles are going to do most of the work for you in terms of driving readers to sign up for the pre-order. So just allow yourself enough time to accumulate the orders you need to break out big and hit the bestseller lists, or to hit your genre lists, or simply to rise higher in the bestseller list than you ever have before. Let's say you're a reasonably good selling author, and on average your books are selling 5 copies a day at Apple. You are never going to get on a bestseller list selling 5 copies a day at Apple. But if you aggregate those 5 sales a day across a 2 or 3 month pre-order period, you can see how that's going to cause you to appear in at least your genre bestseller list. And by appearing in the bestseller list, your book will suddenly become more visible and more desirable to readers that previously you were unable to reach because you weren't in those lists. It's also going to trigger the also bots and the other algorithmic benefits of people who bought this, bought that. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of the benefits of doing a pre-order. Now I know that for a lot of authors, you can't always do budget 4 to 8 weeks. I imagine there are some of you listening to this now, and you've got a book launch coming in 3 weeks, and you've already promised your readers that the book is coming out in 3 weeks. Can you still do a pre-order? The answer is yes. you can upload a pre-order to Smashwords, a week or two in advance of the on sale date. Even if you can get a few days at Apple of pre-order period, any sales that you can accumulate, even if it's only a week's worth of sales, will give you that much more advantage when your book goes on sale. Now, the other advantage of pre-orders, especially if you're working with a distributor like Smashwords, is that, as prior to pre-orders, you would upload your book to Smashwords. Our review team, our vetting team would look at your book within a few days, review your book, approve it for our premium catalog, then we would distribute it out to the retailers, and then the retailers would load your book when they loaded your book. So some retailers would load the book faster, some would load it slower. One advantage of allowing yourself this 4 to 8 week runway, or even a 2-week runway, is that it gives all of the retailers time to load your book and get it listed so that your book can be available for sale at all of these retailers on the same day, so that you don't have to get those emails from your fans complaining that they see that their friends are able to buy the book on Smashwords or on Apple, but it's not at Barnes & Noble yet. So pre-orders has that secondary benefit of giving the retailers time to get your books listed. The other benefit of a pre-order at Apple is that it gives Apple more flexibility to slot you into different themed merchandising features. So, okay, I think that's enough on pre-orders. If you want to learn more about pre-orders, here's the address, smashwords.com/pre-orders. And you'll find a lot of information there. I also blogged about it at the Smashwords blog, and I wrote about pre-orders and some additional marketing ideas for pre-orders over at the Huffington Post. If you Google Mark Coker Huffington Post pre-orders, that'll probably come up at the top of the list. All right, let's move on. So how does Apple select books for merchandising love? We all want merchandising love, so how do we get their attention? First, I want to tell you what your odds are. Your odds are close to nil. Now, I don't want you to curl up in a ball and cry that your odds are impossible. They are possible, but I want you to keep it in perspective. Every person listening now or who watches this video on YouTube is going to want to have their book featured. Most of us are not going to get our books featured, but I'm here to tell you the secrets I know to help maximize your odds. So there are over 2 million books in the Apple iBookstore, and assuming that they can only feature about 100 books per week, let's just say it's 100, often it's less, but let's just say it's 100, that means only 1 in 20,000 books in their catalog can be promoted in any 1 week. That's 5 1,000ths of 1%. Just to help you appreciate how tough it is to get merchandising love. Now, the merchandising team at Apple considers a combination of factors, all aimed to give these human beings the confidence that they need to recommend your book. Now, put yourself in their shoes for a moment. They're a merchandising manager. They are looking for books to recommend to their customers. They love their customers. They will do anything to make their customers happy. Their worst nightmare as a customer-centric company would be to disappoint their customer. And if you walk into a Barnes & Noble or your local indie bookshop, the person behind the counter is going to feel the same way. You're going to ask them for a recommendation. They're going to want to give you their best recommendation because they know that if they give you a bad recommendation, you're not going to trust their recommendations ever again. You're not going to come back to them looking for your next great read. So this is why Apple needs to have great confidence in your book before they're going to promote it. So how do they gain that confidence? We could break that down into three major categories. There are customer-driven factors that build their confidence. There are book or author-specific factors that build their confidence. And then they'll listen to publisher or distributor recommendations. Smashwords is a distributor. It's really important to point out that Apple has the final decision. They make the decisions. So all of us are at their mercy. There are a lot of things that we can do to get them to consider books, but ultimately they're going to decide what they merchandise. But as we go through here, I think you'll start getting a sense of what you can do to increase your advantage. So let's talk about the first of these three, customer-driven editorial factors. Since Apple is a customer-centric company, they pay special attention to how their customers are responding to your books. And one of the best metrics of how customers are responding would be your sales performance. So they look at their own charts. What's trending? What's coming up in the charts? What's holding in the charts? If you've written a book, like Kirsty Mosley is an example, her books, slowly rose up in the charts at Apple and then just stuck there, high in the charts for weeks on end. When a book can sit in the charts for weeks on end with a great sales rank, that says this is a super awesome book, that the customers love it. So they're looking at that. They look at pre-orders. So how is the book performing on the pre-order front? How many orders are you accumulating over time? They're interested to know what's selling well elsewhere. So they're interested to know what's selling well at other Smashwords retailers. At Smashwords, since we're a distributor, we have a really unique vantage point here. We're distributing books to Apple, Barnes & Noble, Sony, Kobo, and others, and we can see when books are breaking out at retailers. We can see when a book is breaking out at Barnes & Noble that hasn't broken out somewhere else. And Apple wants to know that. And so we share that with them. They love to hear that because that gives them increased confidence that, if customers at another store are appreciating and loving that book, then maybe their customers will too, if they give that book a little merchandising love. Because that's really all they want. They want to know that if they give a book some merchandising love, if they expose that book to their customers, that their customers are going to respond favorably to that book. They look very closely at customer ratings and reviews. So one of the neat things in the Apple store, in the iBooks store, is that you can review a book. You can rate a book without typing out a full review. If you think about it, we've talked about the term friction. That eliminates a lot of the friction. It makes it easier for a reader to rate a book on stars without having to go to the trouble to type a full review. And so Apple looks at those customer ratings. They can see how a book is doing, how their customers are responding. I mentioned earlier how Apple supports free titles. They merchandise free books very heavily in the store. Now you might ask and wonder, why would a major retailer put so much promotional effort behind free titles? Almost every week they are promoting books that are permanently priced at free. Why would they do that? Well, the number one reason is that it makes their customers really happy. Apple is there to make their customers happy. Another second reason is that free books drive sales of paid books. So if you have a large list and you've got a book priced at free and it's getting thousands of downloads every day, you're going to see a huge sales increase in the sales of your priced titles. And probably a third reason that they like free titles is that Apple is first and foremost a hardware company. So although they're running the iBook store to make it a profitable multi-billion-dollar business in its own right, just as the entire digital media business is a multi-billion-dollar business, media, these digital media products make the hardware product more valuable, more enjoyable, and more important to that customer. So to the extent that they can thrill and satisfy millions of readers with your books, it makes the iPad, the iPhone more important to that customer. So that's why I think they're such big fans of free. Now, if you've got free books at Apple and you're appearing in the most downloaded, I mean, it's the equivalent of the bestseller list, but for free books, the most downloaded free titles, you are going to catch the attention of Apple's merchandising managers. And the next thing they're going to want to do is see what else do you have at the store. Or they'll be in touch with me and say, hey, we see this author who only has one title and it's only free. What else do they have coming? So we've worked with them to orchestrate some really interesting promotions around new authors that were completely unknown to the world just weeks earlier. We've worked with them to help a lot of authors break out this way, and starting with free. So that's something that you can do to get their attention. If you've got a super awesome book that's going to get a lot of free downloads, you'll catch their attention. Okay. So this is the second part of this. So here I talked about how customer-driven factors drive their merchandising decisions and their selection process. This is their customers reacting to your books. Now, on this slide, I'm talking about what you can do to earn the attention of Apple's customers. All right, so you see how that's connected? If you earn the attention of Apple's customers, their customers are going to take actions that cause Apple to take notice of their actions. That's how it's all linked together. So how do you earn the love and attention of Apple's customers? Well, it requires a long-term dedicated focus. Of course, you need to have your books distributed to Apple nonstop. You need to, Apple's in 51 countries around the world. Each of those countries represents its own distinct micro-market. You can develop readership in every single country. It's possible to become a breakout in one country, but not others at Apple. But if you break out in one country at Apple, it's going to raise the visibility of your book within Apple's global merchandising team. So, if you've got a lot of fans in Australia, I mean, go for it. Because if your book breaks out in Australia and gets the attention in Australia, it's likely to get the attention elsewhere around the world. So think in terms of long-term platform building. You want to develop your fan base at Apple. And I should point out that what I'm sharing with you about Apple it applies to really every other retailer out there. So a lot of the stuff I'm sharing with you can help you be more successful at Amazon and more successful at Barnes & Noble. The best sellers at Apple are generally the books that earn 4.5 5-star reviews, and they are the wow reviews. And you'll see this at every major ebook retailer. Look at the bestseller list, and then look at the written reviews, and you're going to see the word wow. The The readers are writing out that word. Wow, this book was amazing. I couldn't put it down. And so you need to write a book that earns that kind of love from the readers. So a great book, it needs to have a great cover and a great price, and backed by your promotion. A lot of this boils down to that, those 4 factors. You need to promote your Apple titles across all your promotional platforms, your blog, your website, etc. And you can do pre-orders. So we already talked extensively about pre-orders. Oh, I mentioned how you could break out in a smaller market and then it would attract the attention of other merchandising managers. Well, that's what happened with Kirsty Mosley. She broke out first in Australia. All right. Let's talk about some of the book and author-specific factors that the merchandising team at Apple uses to select books. So here's some of the factors for their editorial judgment. The Apple team reads books. They read a lot of books. I don't know how they do it, but they read a lot of books. Since I started Smashwords, I've hardly been able to read any books at all because I've been so busy. And I know they're busy at Apple, but maybe the senior management team has commanded everyone there that they need to read books. They do that. So if they read your book and they like and love your book, then it's going to get merchandising love. They look very closely at cover design. Your cover needs to look professional. It can't look self-published. It needs to look as good or better than what New York is putting out. They want a large cover image. I mean, Apple has cover image requirements. It needs to be at least, I think it's 1,400 pixels wide and whatever corresponding longer length and height. They also want it higher resolution, high resolution. Since Apple has larger cover image requirements than other retailers, what some authors do is they'll take their smaller cover image and just expand it. But that causes the image to be pixelated. I am aware of authors who Apple wanted, who had books that Apple wanted to promote, but they didn't promote them because the cover design was pixelated or it wasn't up to snuff. I've proposed books for them to promote, and they've come back to me and said, nope, that cover's not good enough. And I love it when they give me that feedback, and I share that feedback with our authors. So don't sell yourself short on cover design. Apple will look at the author's track record. If you have a track record of selling really well at Apple, then they're more likely to have faith in your next book. They're interested in your author platform. If you've got 50 people following you on Twitter, that's one thing. But if you've got 50,000 people following you on Twitter, that's another thing entirely. They visit author websites all the time, and they're watching. They're out there in the community watching. If they see that you've got a large, active, and engaged fan base, that's going to give them more confidence. And all this stuff that I'm sharing, it's based on my personal observations. I should point that out. So, and it's a lot of this stuff is pretty obvious to me after working with them for so long. I've got a sense of some of this. They're interested in receiving author marketing plans. So we've done some of this in the course of our pre-order work. So if there's an author that that we want to recommend to Apple, that I'm going to recommend to Apple, if I know that the author has a strong marketing plan for the launch of their book, if I know they've got a large and established and engaged audience out on social media, I will share that information with Apple. It gives Apple more confidence to know that if they give your book promotional coverage, that you're going to be able to be there to back it up and drive customers to the store. So it's a win-win for everyone. They definitely appreciate that kind of reciprocated love, because no one's closer to your fans than you. So you do have a lot of control over the desirability of your books. That's why building your platform is so important. They'll look at the breadth of your list. If you have a larger list, it gives them more flexibility to merchandise and promote your books. They can do a single author feature and give their customers a choice of multiple books. Or if you write series, they can do a promotion around, the series starter. So that's why more books means more merchandising opportunities. All right, publisher and distributor recommendations. So in the old world of print publishing, months and months before a book was released, a publisher's sales team would go out to the retailers or to the retailers' buyers and talk up your books and try to convince the retailer why they should order a lot of copies of that print book and why they should give it front table promotion. Now often they had to pay money to get that front page, that front of store promotion. So some of those practices have carried through into the ebook world and some have not. The practice of publishers and distributors talking up books still happens, and it's a valuable source of information for the retailer. They want to know what's hot because the publisher or the distributor is closest to that book. So we have worked very closely with Apple over the last few years on the merchandising side. They have been an absolutely amazing partner to us and to our authors specifically. The support they've shown our authors is just amazing. And I need to point out that they make the merchandising decisions. We can suggest titles for promotion to them, but they regularly solicit those recommendations, but they make the decisions. And because I know that what they're operating under, that they need to have total confidence in what they're promoting, that really guides the recommendations that I make, because I need to have confidence too. I need to know that if I recommend a book to them, that it's going to do well. Because we all have the same common goals here. So I tend to be somewhat selective in the books that we're going to recommend to Apple or to any retailer, and so it's helpful to understand how do I gain confidence in your title before I feel comfortable recommending it. And for me, the biggest confidence builder is, how is your book performing? And because we're a distributor, I can see how your book is doing at other Smashwords retailers. If you are a best-selling Smashwords author, if you're one of our highest earning authors, then I'm out there promoting you because you have a track record at multiple retailers of selling well. So Apple recognizes that. They really value that we have this aggregated view of sales across multiple retailers, because it gives them the confidence that these titles are proven in the marketplace. Gives them the confidence that if they recommend that title to their customers, they're not going to get mud on their face. So, we look at how well your books are selling across our different retail stores, and we look at how well it's selling at the Smashwords store. We'll often look at how many times you've been favorited by customers at Smashwords. We'll look at some of the same some of the same characteristics that a retailer would look at, all in an attempt to get greater confidence in your book. If you distribute with Smashwords completely, if you use us for distribution to all of our different stores, you do have some advantage over authors that don't distribute everywhere with us, and that's simply because I'm only going to go off of the numbers that I see. And if an author comes to me and says, well, I'm number 10 at Barnes & Noble, but they're uploading direct to Barnes & Noble, I'm not seeing those numbers. And in fairness to all of the authors that we serve, I need to go with the ones who've proven themselves and I can see the valid numbers. So that gives you some insight into how I approach this. But this doesn't mean that if you don't distribute all your books exclusively through Smashwords that you're not going to get us promoting your book at Apple or other retailers, because we regularly, routinely promote authors that upload direct to some of these other stores. It just means that if you distribute with us, you have that much more of an incremental advantage over those that don't, because you're going to show up higher in our filters. As I mentioned already, we do track pre-order performance. If I see your book has already accumulated 1,000 pre-orders at Apple, and you still have another several days or months to go in your pre-order period, I'll be talking with Apple about that. They're going to want to hear that they're going to want to hear that I'm flagging a title that has that's doing really well and is likely going to hit their top bestseller lists. That'll give them confidence. If you're distributing with Smashwords and specifically distributing with us to Apple, and you have a strong track record at Apple, and you're coming out with a new release, give us a heads up. Give me a heads up. I do want to know about that. If you've sold thousands and thousands of copies at Apple, you should be doing a pre-order with us, and just send me an email, heads up. I've got this pre-order coming, and my email is out there for everyone. It's mc@smashwords.com, and I'll be happy to try to help you structure your pre-order so that it can maximize your chances of success. All right, so we're going to do a pre-order case study now on the topic of pre-orders for Kirsty Mosley. Now, Kirsty is interesting for a number of different reasons. She's a UK author. She first published with Smashwords April 2012 this book, The Boy Who Sneaks in My Bedroom Window. And near as I can tell, she didn't do a lot of marketing for it, but she did have a following over at Wattpad, where she first released this book. And this book, we distributed it out to all the stores, and it started selling really well at Apple, especially in Australia, and it held steady in its sales. So that's how the book first caught my eye. And then in October 2012, she published Always You. And these are standalone books, they're not series. some other interesting things about Kirsty. Her books are priced at $2.99. I know some authors like to be all ADHD on their pricing and manipulate and change their pricing all the time. She just held it steady the entire time, which is interesting. I think that works. She maintained nonstop distribution to all the different retailers, and her sales grew organically, propelled by reader word of mouth. She got really great reviews. She's an author who gets wow reviews. That's why she's such a strong selling author. Her books caught the attention of the merchandising manager in Australia, which led to on-store promotions in Australia, which led to even more sales in Australia. And she proved herself really well there. And then that caught the attention of other merchandising managers around the world at Apple. All the merchandising managers at Apple are in communication with one another. You know, I can't tell you if they have daily or weekly meetings or what, but they do share information because they're all on the same team trying to identify books that are going to make their customers happy. So Kirsty alerted me to the fact that she was about to come out with a new book called Free Falling, titled Free Falling. And I happened to know at that time that we were getting ready to start doing some private beta testing on pre-orders with Apple. And so we got together and did Free Falling as a pre-order. This was the first pre-order book that Smashwords ever did with Apple. And it launched on May 15th. Now, what was really exciting about this is that Apple got behind this book in a way that you wouldn't believe. It was just amazing. So working with Kirsty and working with Apple's global merchandising team, they put together a multi-week promotion. They had different promotions happening in different countries every single week. So we got the pre-order out there. It had a pre-order sample. It was that was the first, not only the first pre-order, but the first pre-order sample at Smashwords. She got front of store promotion, multiple standalone features at Apple, and multiple email blasts. So she hit the lottery multiple times. Her book launched on the same day as Dan Brown's new book. So it didn't hit #1 everywhere, but it did hit #2 in the largest markets. So it was a really successful campaign, and it really opened my eyes to what can happen if the merchandising team at Apple puts their weight behind a title. Now, this is really unusual that any author, even a traditionally published author, would get so much merchandising love in the weeks leading up to a book launch. I wouldn't want anyone listening to this to expect that this is standard practice for every book. It's not. But it is an example of what can happen if you get some merchandising love. But Kirsty was able to get this merchandising love only because she had proven herself to Apple's customers previously with her previous 2 books. So as you approach your merchandising strategy with Apple, I want you to view it as a long-term journey. If you're now just starting to get actively involved in supporting the iBook store, it may take some time before you can satisfy Apple's customers to the point that they're helping to elevate your books, elevate the sales, and get the attention of Apple. But once you do start rising to that level, this kind of success, the ability to get any kind of merchandising love at Apple, will increase your exposure, increase your fan base at Apple, increase your sales at Apple, and increase the odds of further promotion with your future books. All right, so let's look at how some of Kirsty's promotions appeared in the store in these weeks leading up. So here's one of the stores. I think this was the U.S. store. So you see here, she got her own standalone brick here in Romance. So Free Falling, Kirsty Mosley, pre-order. Apple created that artwork for her. This is another promotion on another different week. Here you see at the top of the page, the top feature, the rotator feature, they did a sneak peeks feature. And you'll see this at Apple quite a bit, where they promote pre-orders that include samples. All right, so every pre-order that we send to Apple has a sample in it. And so multiple pre-orders of ours have been included in this feature. So it's a regular merchandising feature that's only available to pre-orders. So it's another reason to do a pre-order, is that it makes it possible that makes it more possible that you get that kind of promotion. So if someone clicked on that sneak peek feature on the home page, and this feature ran for an entire week, they got this page. And look at this. You got mysteries and thrillers up here. So these are all big New York published books. Then second category, romance. The first title there, Kirsty Mosley. Pre-order for $3.99. That's just massive. That's like winning the lottery right there. To be the first title on the left, that's where you want to be. So that was just super cool. So that now let's look at the customer experience. So let's say you're an Apple customer. You click on that title because you're interested in that pre-order, and this is the sneak peek thing, so you know that you're going to get a sample. So you click to the book page. This is the book page. So this is what the pre-order page looks like. It looks like a regular book page. You get this little note here. It says pre-order on the iPhone, and you've got the different colored buy button, which curiously is kind of the Amazon orange. I don't know if that was deliberate or not. And then you click on here to sample the download, or download the sample, and then this is the screen within the iBooks app. So there's her beautiful cover, and the reader can read the book, and then when they get to the end of the sample, it says there are 18 pages left, when they get to the end of the sample, this is what they had at the end of the sample. Buy the complete book, Kirsty Mosley Free Falling, pre-order now. So a really strong call to action for that customer. If you enjoyed this sample, buy the book now or pre-order it now. So it was hugely successful. But this is the type of thing that you get just by simply doing a pre-order. And just as a reminder, all those pre-orders that you accumulate credit to your sales rank on day one at Apple. At Barnes & Noble, it doesn't work that way. But at Kobo, it works that way. So at Apple and Kobo, all your pre-orders credit on day one. And I should also point out that during that time that your book is available as a pre-order at Apple, let's say you're accumulating 100 or 50 pre-orders a day, you can appear in the bestseller list simply for accumulating pre-orders. And I've seen that with several of our authors, accumulating or appearing in the bestseller lists even though they're only as a pre-order. So I just shared with you a case study of Kirsty Mosley. That was the first pre-order that we ever did at Apple. Now we've since done many other pre-orders, and we've since put or helped put multiple other books into the top 10 at Apple, including #1 rankings, simply because of the power of pre-orders. When I when I wrote my Huffington Post piece about pre-orders, if you Google it, you can find it. I actually predicted, I named 3 titles that were going to hit the top 10 around the world at Apple, and I predicted that weeks in advance of the books going on sale. And I was able to predict that because I could see how many accumulated orders they had. So that was pretty neat. All right, so thank you for listening to this. Hope you're not tired of my voice. I know my voice is getting tired of talking. Let's just excuse me. Let's go through some of the key points that I want you to remember before I leave you. Remember that Apple is the world's 2nd largest global ebook retailer. So you want to be there. Every week, indie authors are getting the feature promotion in these merchandising features that I've been talking about. And often this promotion happens without any interaction from anyone. It's just Apple seeing a title and promoting it, which is pretty neat. If a book is selected for merchandising love, it's going to put your career on a completely different track, because it's going to increase your visibility, increase the rate of fan building, and help you to build a strength upon which you will build even more strength with future releases. One neat thing about merchandising love at Apple is that it's completely merit-based. You earn it. You earn it by writing a book that deserves it. You earn it by investing your promotional effort into the Apple iBook store. So if you're out there driving fan development, reader development at Apple, supporting Apple's customers with your books and with your promotion and with your pre-orders and your merch and everything that you're doing out there, you're going to increase your odds of deserving the merchandising love. Write that book that wows the customers at Apple. It's the same book that's going to wow customers everywhere, but focus on wow. You got to get to wow. Otherwise, it's going to be really tough to get this kind of merchandising love. If you're a Smashwords author and your book is among the bestsellers, we're going to do what we can to advocate for you. But I can't make any promises either, because we're working with 60,000 authors, and we would love it if every one of our authors could get feature promotion every week. So far, Apple hasn't allowed us that privilege, but I can say that they have been absolutely amazing to our authors and to the entire indie author community. So they're definitely your friend. Get out there and support them. So here are the 3 books that I wrote. I would encourage you to go download them. If you haven't already, they're all free. They're available everywhere. The Smashwords Style Guide teaches you how to format and publish a book at Smashwords. The Book Marketing Guide, 40 or 41 marketing tips, all free to implement, and all of them will help you build your author platform. And then the 3rd book, The Secrets to Book Publishing Success. So I published that last year. It identifies 30 best practices of the most commercially successful Smashwords authors. If you implement all of the recommendations in My Secrets book, you will maximize your odds of success at Apple. It's almost definite, because these are the best practices of professional authors. These are the authors, and among those best practices are writing books that wow people. But there are a lot of other things you can do to raise your visibility, and I talk about them in that book. So go get it for free and tell a friend. All right, and these are our coordinates. If you're not subscribed to the Smashwords blog, you can do that today. There's an email subscription option on the blog page, and so you'll never miss another Smashwords post. I've done a lot of posts over the last few months on pre-orders, on the subject of pre-orders, and talking about, I've also done several posts on Apple merchandising. If you look back through the archive there over the last 9 months, I've done some posts on Apple specifically, so check that out. And that's it. I am going to... Orna, are you there?
I am indeed.
I'm coming back.
Yes, I'll come back briefly. I won't keep you too long, I promise.
All right. I'm going to take a sip here.
Yes, do. I'm sure you need a glug. Yeah,
all right,
fantastic. Fantastic again, Mark. Thank you so much. So much information there. I'm really glad that we have video so that we'll be able to go back in and kind of get the detail again. But I do have a couple of quick questions for you if you are able for it at this point.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Again, there were questions that were sort of adequately covered in the presentation, but Joanna asked, you talk about proven in the marketplace. Is there any interest in promoting literary work, or is it all about sales for everybody?
Actually, yes. I think there is. I know Apple is interested in providing a well-rounded bookstore experience for their customers.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, even though romance is like the top category everywhere in the world, Apple's very interested to support authors in other categories. So I think if someone who writes literary fiction can make a compelling case that they are strong within their field, then I think Apple would consider them. I think a lot of that will come back to sales rank, but if you can make the case that you're one of the strongest performing literary fiction, if your book is one of the strongest performing literary fiction books, even though it may not have romance or thriller or mystery level sales, I think it would still be of interest. I know it would be of interest to me. I mean, same thing with poetry. If you've got a best-selling poetry book, I would be interested to promote that. I mean, poetry doesn't usually sell, but if you're a best-selling poetry author, why not? I think Apple's really interested in diversity.
It's an interesting question, though. I mean, what is a best-selling poetry book? At what level? Obviously, it doesn't get mystery level sales, as you say, thriller level sales. But are you saying somebody?
So how are you appearing in the sales rank for that micro category?
Okay, good. All right then, that seems pretty clear. Yeah, Laura wants to know if you have published with Lulu and then and through then Amazon, just in paperback, I think. Can you also publish that book separately with Smashwords?
Yes. Yeah. So as long as the author has the rights to the book, they can publish and distribute through Smashwords. So so she's asking about a print book through Lulu. Yeah, she can definitely do an ebook through Smashwords. We can distribute the book to most of the major retailers except for Amazon, and then she would upload her book directly to Amazon as an ebook.
Okay, and finally, then this is a question about Smashwords beta EPUB function. First of all, wondering, is it coming out of beta soon? And secondly, what does somebody do if their book is being rejected?
Okay, so the first question is about EPUB. So when Smashwords first started 5 years ago, we required authors to upload a formatted Microsoft Word document, and that would go into our meat grinder conversion system, and we would convert it into multiple formats, including EPUB, MOBI, PDF, and others. In December of 2012, we announced support for direct EPUB uploads, so an author can upload an EPUB directly to Smashwords. So they don't need to upload a Microsoft Word document if they don't want to. So I think that was the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what do you do if your book was rejected? So when a book is uploaded to Smashwords, it goes for sale immediately on the Smashwords homepage, and then it goes into a queue where it's manually reviewed by our vetting team. And I should say there's another intermediate step. The moment you upload a book to Smashwords, we have an automated formatting checker, which is called Auto Vetter. Auto Vetter inspects your book instantly the moment you upload it, and will automatically report back to you what it suspects are formatting errors with your book. And you'll see those errors on screen, and you'll also receive an email that identifies the auto vetter errors that it found, along with instructions on how to fix them. Once you've eliminated all your auto vetter errors, your book is reviewed by our vetting team, and they're based here in Los Gatos, California. And our vetting team is looking at the books to make sure they meet primarily the mechanical requirements of the retailers. We're looking for books that are well formatted, that have valid copyrights, and that don't violate our terms of service. There's certain types of books that we won't carry. We carry just about everything, but we don't carry public domain titles. We don't carry erotica that contains underage characters, for example. Now, if your book is rejected, with that, we don't really like the word reject because we're not judging your book's quality. We're trying to make judgments on these mechanical characteristics. Our vetting team will give you instructions on how to fix that problem. And if you're unable to fix the problem, then you should contact our support team. At the top of every Smashwords page, there's a link that says Comments, Questions. You click that link, you can contact our support team, and they'll try to help you and point you in the right direction. If you find that getting your book formatted is just too difficult, another option is to hire someone. So we maintain a list of low-cost recommended formatters. At Smashwords, it's called Mark's List. And if you send an email to list@smashwords.com, you'll receive the list via instant autoresponder. So these are all independent freelancers. They're almost all Smashwords authors on the list. The formatting starts at around $35 for a book and goes up from there. And we don't earn a commission or anything if you hire their services. And because we don't take a cut, it means they're able to offer their services for even cheaper. So that's a good low-cost method of getting your book whipped into shape if for some reason you're not able to do it yourself.
Right. I think with John, the questioner, it was he had tried the EPUB option and it wasn't working.
It was
suggested to him that Smashwords needs a different kind of EPUB to everybody else, but I thought EPUB was sort of the industry standard and is the same across the board. So, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I'm trying to guess what the issue might be. We use we're taking industry standard EPUB files, but possibly the book is generating some kind of auto vetter error. There's always a chance that we're giving him an erroneous error. If he's getting an error that he doesn't agree with, then we want to hear from him.
Sure.
Because the Smashwords Direct feature is still in beta. There are some known bugs with it, and those bugs are some of those bugs are documented on our pre-order information, on our Smashwords Direct information page, but our support team can take a look and help him, or at least try to help him. I'd need to know more about what the error was.
Sure, sure. And I think he's gone to bed now because he's here in London and
Okay.
2 a.m. over here. So contact the support team anyway is the thing to do. And yeah, I think that's about it for us. Just remains for me to say thank you so much, Mark. Absolutely fantastic presentation. We got some wonderful feedback already. People who were saying it was worth the membership of the Alliance for the year just for that alone.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen in. And I know a lot of you stayed up late. Orna, it's 2 a.m. there.
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. in Sydney, and we have some people there.
So you're amazing for organizing this. I know a lot of work went into it on your part, so thank you for bringing it all together. You know, it's my honor to have a chance to speak with you and the members.
Thanks so much, and yeah, we'll be in touch, and we'll see you all at Smashwords.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Good luck, everyone. Bye.